All right, welcome into Spilly on the Rocks. So the the Rockies, they just finished up a six-game homestand. It was pretty exciting. You had the gamut of emotions. Starting Friday, I think I went over they were down 9-0. Rockies were down 9-0 to the Pirates. They came from behind and they won. Second time in Rockies franchise history, they were down 9 and came back to 1. That was um, an amazing game Friday night against Pittsburgh. Dugan Darnell making a major league debut, getting a win. Brenton Doyle walk-off homer. Just two buddies that were from Division III baseball that had this great connection because of their wives. They like lived next to each other in the minor leagues, and they grew really tight. And so Friday was awesome. Then on Saturday, they beat Paul Skeens. Since Saturday, Rockies baseball not good. Lose Sunday, so they had a chance for a sweep. It would have been the first sweep at Coors Field since last year against the Texas Rangers. And then the Toronto Blue Jays came into town. And I was really fascinated to see what the Blue Jays would do in Colorado. Why? Well, do you want me to show you some stuff? Yeah, I'm going to show you some stuff in a second. So Toronto is a team that if you track them, the season for the Blue Jays was nuts. Before the season even started, they had Vlad Guerrero Jr., and Bo Bichette, both guys that were going to be free agents by the end of this year. Vlad hadn't been hurt, so he was basically like an extension candidate. He was born in Canada. Like his dad is a Hall of Famer, right? Like Vlad Guerrero. So he's born in Canada. He makes a lot of sense for the Blue Jays. He's young. And then after the Juan Soto deal, we are all kind of curious, like, well, what is Vlad Guerrero Jr. going to make? Because the guy's 25, 26 years old. And the Juan Soto deal was based on age. That's the reason why he got $700 million. So Soto set the market, but for young players. For young players. Guerrero was going to be a young player. He'd also like was a runner-up MVP. This guy's like numbers are crazy, especially when you think about a slugger that doesn't strike out and basically walks the same amount of times that he punches out. So that's a number that you can kind of predict and go like, yeah, this guy's gonna be good for a long time. So he has the hit tool. He's a hitter, and then he hits for power. Perfect combination, perfect combo. So the Blue Jays, it was really fascinating to see this offseason. It was like one of my favorite off seasons to pay attention to when I do all this stuff for the national side, because Toronto has a manager on the hot seat in John Schneider. They had Ross Atkins, who I love, comes from the Guardians organization, and Mark Shapiro, who came from the Guardians too. So you have Guardians backed front office as far as like their thinking with big pockets like Sportsnet, the Rogers Center, like that. That's like basically AT&T or Verizon owning a baseball team. It's like what we're seeing with the Atlanta Braves, Liberty Media owning the Braves. So like big bank with a team that has, some interesting players. The front office had a bunch of guys on expiring contracts. So like this is kind of a make or break year for Toronto. And they've built a team in a way that resembles the Guardians. So they are contact, they pitch pretty well, and they play really good defense. They play defense in a place like the Rogers Center, which is artificial turf. I usually point out over the course of the years, like one of my variables for teams that we've seen now the last 10 years, teams that have controlled environments, uh, teams that have artificial turf have been very successful. Why? Because they can build around pitching and defense. So think about it. Who are those teams? Houston Astros, Milwaukee Brewers, Tampa Bay Rays. You can function at a lower margin with these environments because you can maximize pitchers and defense. You don't get bad hops on artificial turf. Blue Jays fell into that category, right? Dome, artificial turf, controlled environment, but a big bank. So they are different than the Brewers and the Guardians and the Rays. And most people like never talk about this because they you don't look at this. They're also a development team. So Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, they spent a lot of money on development. They've spent a lot of money on the facilities in Toronto, just like the Brewers. And so this year was like a make or break year. Were they going to be pushing for an American League title? Are they going to get to the World Series? And so if you check out the end of June for the Blue Jays, they were a couple games back of the Yankees, and then they go on this tear, and they've been on a tear. They end up sweeping the Yankees 4-game series, and they go basically from 3 games back of the Yankees to now they're up 3 games, and right now they're um, way in charge of the American League East. So all those little pieces that I talk about, contact, striking people out, this is really important. And so now I think that since you have the backing of what I'm talking about, you can understand what I'm going to show you. And then it'll make a lot more sense to when you now see the Rockies taking on this Blue Jays team. So let's do side by side. This one should be better. All right. We're going to go side by side this time. So here we go, side by side. You and I were next to each other. All right, this is much better. Let's get Nick off my screen. So here we go. American League, the Blue Jays are leading after this Rockies series. They're 67-48. Fantastic. That is the best record in the American League, better than the Tigers now. So what do they do well? Standard batting, American League. I like strikeouts. I talk about run differential. I think it's a bogus stat. I like home run differential, but what I love even more is strikeout differential. So teams that strike out less as an offensive group, and then a pitching staff that can punch your ticket. So here we go. Blue Jays, toughest team in baseball, not just the American League in striking out. So 757 punch outs in 4,400 at bats. That's crazy. That is great. So well below league average in their punch out rate. By the way, the Rockies should be looking to build themselves like the Blue Jays or the Brewers. They don't have the controlled environment, so it's never going to work out because Coors Field will get crazy and wonky sometimes. But this is at least a blueprint. 267 batting average, that's the best in the American League. So these guys rake. 337 on base percentage, love it. Overall, 759 OPS. 759 OPS is above league average. So 109 as a team, 109. So 9% better than everybody else. So 757 punch outs as a unit offensively. They don't hit a ton of homers. They're probably middle of the road in the American League. Let's see where they're at. They're below league average in the American League. It's okay because the strikeout, and they have a bunch of guys that can hit. Now let's look at the strikeouts. So team standard pitching, the team that strikes out the most pitching staff is the Houston Astros. They're good, right? Like let's look at the Astros when it comes to team strikeouts. They should be near the bottom. Yep. Here's the calculus for some of these good teams. They're thinking beyond home run differential and run differential. So they are 885 punch outs as a group. Royals have kind of followed this metric. There's the Guardians, teams we talk about. Now let's look at the punch outs. Houston Astros have struck out the most amount of batters in the American League, and then you have the Blue Jays right after. So if you were to take the pitching staff, so Blue Jays pitching 1,021, and then subtract the hitters, 757, that's a plus, close to a plus 300. That's nuts. Take the Yankees. Pitching staff, they punch out a lot of tickets, 1,010. But from a hitter standpoint, they've struck out 1,002. So they are a plus 8. Toronto's almost plus 300. You see what I'm talking about? All right. So now let's get into some of the box scores of this weekend. And they basically killed the Rockies. So the first day, Toronto comes in town, 15 runs on 25 hits. That's the most amount of hits they've had all season. They struck out. How many times did they strike out in that game? 5 times. This game is actually kind of crazy because they had 7 hits below 80 miles an hour, which was the most amount of hits in a game this season. So that was on Monday, killed the Rockies. Also, the Rockies threw Tanner Gordon, not a huge strikeout rate. So this kind of ended up being a perfect storm or whatever, a bad storm. Then you go into Tuesday. Toronto scores 10 on 14 hits. They strike out. They hit 5 homers. They strike out 4 times. They had more homers than strikeouts. This was against Anthony Molina, making his second major league start, and he was good up until the sixth inning, and then he got killed. But still, these numbers are going to ring true. So another 14 hits on top of the 25. So if you're good at math, that's 39 hits. And then on Wednesday, day game, hot, Kyle Freeland pitching, not a huge strikeout guy, struck out 4. Rocky struck out 6. So how many strikeouts is that? 15 total strikeouts. And they added 24 more hits in 20 runs. So think about this. I think I have the Rockies post-game notes. Okay, can you see this? So the Rockies were swept for the 14th time this season. That's crazy. But this is what I want to get to. 45 runs, 63 hits, 13 home runs were the most in a 3-game series in franchise history. Yeah. Toronto set a franchise record for runs and hits in a 3-game set. Of course they did, collecting 45 runs, 63 total hits in 3 games at Coors Field. Most hits in a 3-game series in the modern era, surpassing the 1950 St. Louis Browns. So we're going way back. 13 home runs were tied for the most in a 3-game series since Boston 2009. So what does that mean? I keep kind of suggesting this to you. Rockies have some blueprints out there that I hope that they follow. They're witnessing it firsthand. First off, they need a pitching staff that can create some swing and miss. And then the overall lineup needs to put the ball in play. There's nothing left to talk about. It's not, you could get away with some weak contact, right? But if the Rockies were striking out 5 times a game of the 27 outs plus the hits that they get, that means you're forcing a defense to try to make a play on however many plays, at least 22, and then balls in play, turning into hits. They're probably going to average 10 hits a game just by putting the ball in play because of Coors Field. Batting average ball in play at Coors Field is higher than any place else in baseball. Blueprints there. They just witnessed it. It was an absolute buzzsaw. And again, there's certain things that I want to happen. This was one of them. Watch how they played. Take some notes. There's some righty-lefty combinations here. They're very athletic, the Blue Jays. And the players that were raking aren't aircraft carriers. I mean, yes, you got Vlad Guerrero, who's a $500 million player. You have Bo Bichette that's probably going to make $150 million. Minimum. But then you had a bunch of guys that you probably couldn't even name. And so Blue Jays come in. It's also great seeing Kevin Gossman, Grandview High School kid, 2 pitches. Fastball with extension, little carry, and an off-speed pitch, a changeup. It's called the vertical game, man. Up and down, front to back. Some bad news, too, for the Rockies. Orlando Arcia predicting Tommy John. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I am. He got hurt on a throw, took it at bat, hurt his elbow, came out. He went to first base and was like, done. RC is really important, not because of the production. Production's not great, but because of the energy. Could you find another energy guy? Sure. But I'm telling you, the Latin American energy guy, like the Cargos and the Johnny Herreras and the Jonathan Dazas that we've had, Raimel Tapias, this guy's a little bit better personality-wise than those guys, except for Cargo. Need him. Tyro Estrada, pulled hamstring, probably done for the year, my guess. So you have 2 of the Latin guys that have been really fun from an energy standpoint are out. Adael Amador is back. Rockies are short a bench player. Are we going to see a major league debut with Kyle Karros? Maybe. Maybe you'll see Ryan Ritter back on Friday. So Rockies have a day off. Then they take on the Arizona Diamondbacks, a different looking Arizona Diamondbacks team since they sold everybody. They traded them away. So we'll see. Hopefully the Rocks get hot. Rock Show comes with it. But Toronto, they just showed you the blueprint. The blueprint for the Rockies to be successful moving forward. Have to have contact. Have to have contact. Balls in play, and then let's get this rotation and bullpen to start punching some tickets. You have to have it front to back. You can follow me at SpillyGoat19. You can follow the boys at Mile High Sports.